Hi everyone. I wanted to show some code snippets that I use in projects. Um, kind of, especially if your project is divided into multiple smaller projects. For example, let's say, there are multiple background processors, multiple web services, microservices, and for those types of applications, like a little pattern kind of thing. So this is like a certain utility class that I kind of developed, and like I slowly keep adding more things. Um, but in most of the time, we deal with Unix epoch. So I have some methods that get normal datetime value and gets the Unix datetime value based upon the past input. And then similarly, what I do is when we log exception, sometimes only the outer exceptions message would be stored. But instead, when I log, I prefer having, it, logging the inner exceptions. So here is a static serialized method that serializes an exception. When I pass in an exception, I create a string builder and kind of it loops, loops and gets the inner exception and creates a string of the inner exceptions message and stack trace. In a similar way, I have several environment variables. Um, so I have a little method. This is kind of a specific one for my project, but kind of in general, having best practices. If you are looking for certain environment variables, and so that the appropriate config file would be picked. In those cases, I would suggest doing this kind of validation in the startup of the application during the very beginning of the application. Similarly, I have some, I have a global config and common config. So, in my applications, I have some settings that are common irrespective of the environment. Those are the common config. And then there are certain settings that are different for each environment. That is the config bar. And because I have multiple processes and multiple microservices, a lot of the settings are very common. So instead of having a settings file for each application, and what I do is I have a folder where the settings file would be, and all the applications would read the settings from the same folder and from the same configuration file. And these are some little snippets, helpful snippets, to see if a certain string has if every character is ASCII or not. And like another little code snippet. I have a little regex here. What it does is if you pass a string that has some ASCII and non-ASCII characters, it removes the non-ASCII characters and returns only the ASCII characters. Like it's easier for when you don't know the data that comes in, and if you want to clean the data and you have only ASCII values, this method would be helpful. Um, and this is like a little code snippet. So in most of the places, like if we have long strings, we would display 20 characters, 30 characters, or 50 characters, and then append dots. So this is a little method that does the same and gets snippet, takes in a value, asks for the length, and boolean if dot should be appended. So yeah, I'm going to make a blog post and share some of the code. And what another thing I do is I maintain a constants file, so that I don't hard code the strings in the app. I don't hard code even the config values, or so that the config values would not be scattered throughout the application. All of those would be here within the constants class. And in a similar way, in a similar way, I have a config helper class. So this is the usefulness of this class is the applications that need to read configuration values are not directly depending or not directly trying to read from the app settings. Instead, uh, the applications would be using config helper. So config helper is a little kind of a little wrapper. So let's say if I want to store my secrets in a, let's say if I have multiple ways. So for example, let's say if I'm storing some settings in a settings file, and let's say if I'm storing some settings in a AWS, the key management thing. AWS has, as secrets manager. Let's see. AWS Secret Manager. Um, so, irrespective of where I store the application, and let's say even if I store something on the file system, and let's say if there is a some kind of a key, like an encrypted key, all of that would be abstracted from the applications, and the config helper would abstract away the process of how the config, how or from where the configuration values are being fetched, and like so that the consuming applications or the rest of the applications, whether they are microservices or web applications or background tasks, would not have to worry about how to get the values, and all of that is abstracted here. And as I mentioned earlier, with having one global directory with the settings file, I don't have to place the settings in multiple places, and in a similar way, with having like a little class for constants, I don't have to have these in multiple different places. This is kind of I mentioned earlier in a different blog post. I'm doing some kind of improving the security and the kind of with anomaly detection. That is, kind of collecting metrics, analyzing the metrics, and if there are any anomalies in the metrics, immediately an alert would be raised. In a similar way, centralized logging. I have looked up in different solutions, Grafana and ELK, Elasticsearch, ELK, Stack, and all of these. Yeah, I'm kind of considering whether to go for a paid solution or if I should host my own servers. But all of these have the advantages and disadvantages. For example, Grafana um, has a one little thing. One primary concern is they display the key in plain text. And what happens is if someone gets hold of the key, of course, it can be easily deleted and everything. But with the spies and all the bad things that are going around, if the key is noticeable for other people, they can ingest bad data. One of the security thing is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The integrity of data would be of the ingested logs would be messed up if wrong logs are being ingested. So, there are certain concerns when kind of trying to look for workarounds or kind of securing. Yeah, and I think Grafana should consider restricting based upon IP address. They have a key, and using the key, logs can be ingested. However, if they allow IP restrictions, so for example, this key can ingest logs only from this IP address or from this IP range, then that way their security would be nicer. And of course, Grafana has a what should I say, kind of a excellent free plan, 50 GB of logs in just log ingestion, and of course, 50 GB of logs for every 30 days. And one problem with them is, you know, like they have only 14-day retention period. And at least as of now, I did not see any way of exporting the logs, but I would say like 14 days log retention is very less. Logs should be, like kind of archived for a longer period. So, for example, here, like here you can see I'm ingesting logs at about, I don't know, at 400 something KB per hour. And if you see here, Grafana, I'm ingesting logs both into CloudWatch and Grafana because Grafana has a easier visual interface. And here you can see I have used about 6 GB of maximum of 50 GB in the past 30 days. Mm, I'll show you. So here, explore, and let's say, mm, so here you can see there is like a bunch of logs and easier visualization. Yeah, I haven't played much with the visualization, but I know Grafana has very generous 50 GB log ingestion. And then, like the ELK stack can be downloaded and used for free. However, the paid solution that is slightly higher, especially for a startup like mine, which has no revenue. So, 95 per month is a little bit on the higher end. Um, yeah, I'll show you. Here I'm logging into my console, AWS console. This is my root user, and I get prompted for the YubiKeys, YubiKey. This is my YubiKey, YubiKey Bio fingerprint-based authentication. And mm, CloudWatch. Here you can see, several different logs are getting ingested. All of these have a large retention period of 13 months. So, like I'm retaining logs for 13 months. And yeah, as I mentioned, and even storing there's this I think I wrote a blog post about MySQL audit plugin. I'm using MariaDB, and I'm using the audit plugin. So and these are the CloudTrail logs. So every activity that happens here in AWS is logged here. PodDB, these are logs of PodDB, the application logs. These are nlog application logs. These are Nginx web server logs, the syslog, simple pass logs, uh, the Unix servers auth log, access logs, and yeah, ultimately a bunch of different logs, and yeah, and even these are for the code builds. Um, I don't have for some of the applications. What I did was I'm using Amazon's code build. So what happens is when I check in code into, um, I'll show you. So for example, PodDB. Uh, So what I do is, whenever I check in my code, if there is a word, if the commit message has the word complete, Then the code build would, code build is a CI/CD and not CD per se, but more of continuous integration. That is, gets the code and does a build. And if my messages have the word intermittent, that is, like if I did not complete a feature and the feature is not complete and somewhere in the middle, in the comments when I do a comment, I would put the word intermittent. That is, whatever feature hyphen intermittent, or whatever feature complete. So that's how I do the CI/CD. Uh, yeah, and of course, there's still a little bit more of work that needs to be done. But yes. Mm, And then, yeah, that's about for now. I'll definitely share some of the code snippets in the technical blog. The technical blog can be viewed at lightservices.com. And here, if you see, I have three different blogs, one for company announcements, another for a technical blog. So if you click on the technical blog, lightservices.com/technical hyphen talk. This is where anything related to technology. For example, like over the past 2 days, I have been playing with collecting metrics. So yeah, over the past 2 days, I did write some blog posts about collecting metrics using a thing called collectd. And there is another a similar one known as statsd. Um, yeah, but kind of, like a statsd, it's kind of, like one of the primary concerns for me is VPN. As of now, I was not able to find a proper VPN software that would support YubiKey Bio. There are, but kind of very rare and kind of messy. So one of the things I found was there's this company known as Spark Labs. Um, they have like a certain product known as viscosity. Viscosity is pretty much kind of a proprietary version of another VPN software known as OpenVPN. OpenVPN is a kind of a free VPN for fewer people. If the number of users is larger, you have to buy a license. If for one or two people, OpenVPN is a free software. And Viscosity has like what is a kind of um, a proprietary version of OpenVPN, and they were supposed to um, support YubiKey. For example, I'll show you. But of course, the configuration is kind of messy, and I was still not able to kind of get hold of getting the proper configuration. Um, yeah, but yes, if I do get this right, that is, if I'm able to properly configure OpenVPN with Viscosity for a YubiKey two-factor authentication, I'll definitely share in a blog post, and maybe I will even kind of send an email to Spark Labs saying, hey, there are some problems with your documentation, because I tried once or twice configuring with the instructions provided in these two articles, but I was not able to get those proper. I tried contacting them, but they weren't much helpful. Um, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna try. And you see, the problem with the other software is, for example, when I connect into my websites, I always prefer YubiKey. If I'm using username and password, there is a very, very, very high probability of someone logging in, even with OTPs, because like OTP theft and the spying eyes, as in like the spying drones. It's a big mess. They have literally messed up my life for the past 5 years. So yeah, the India's raw agents have a kind of a spying drone, and they call it some kind of spy eyes or whatever. I don't know, but some kind of invisible drone capable of yeah recording, viewing, whispering, hearing, etc., etc. And at least a dozen, or maybe even more than a dozen, people were involved in identity theft, hacking, etc., etc. So that's the reason I don't trust username password with OTP. I trust the UB key because with with the spying drones, they can't use this. There is another version of UB key. For this, anyone can insert and tap on the little thing. But with the YubiKey bio, even if someone gets the key, and even if they insert into the port, their fingerprint wouldn't match. Yeah. So, but anyway, there's a lot of thing. But yeah. So for my log ingestion and log monitoring, I want some kind of a very secure application that would allow me and only me to log in. So that's kind of where the open source version of the Elasticsearch stack, the ELK stack, is a little bit of unsecure. I wish they would have, or maybe I don't know. I haven't went through the documentation completely, but if there is a way of securing the ELK stack, that would be great. But yeah, as of now, I didn't completely look into the ELK stack documentation, but that's definitely something I'm kind of considering for log monitoring. As of now, I'm collecting metrics. I think ELK also has some kind of metric collection. So yeah, kind of still some a little bit of a decision making process and um, anomaly detection and alerts and kind of a dashboard. Yeah, the ELK stack has all of these should at least as per from what I read in blogs, ELK stack should have support for all of these. Yeah, some more information sharing some other time. Until then.